All right, I think due to time, we are going to get started as everyone starts to trickle in. I would just love to introduce everyone and welcome everyone to this webinar called The New Normal, which is a reflection of post-COVID-19 on sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence. It is presented by the Gender Community of Practice, which is powered by the Youth Power and Learning Evaluation Platform. I would just like to introduce myself as your facilitator today. I am Candice Chirwa. I am the co-champion, the gender co-champion and youth advisor. And I am also sort of working with my friend Chisna Kupungu, who's the community of practice champion for today. She will be facilitating questions. She'll also be, adding in specific questions in chat. I just want to make a disclaimer. I am currently at an airport. So if you do hear an announcement go off, it is not with regards to the webinar. Just have a little bit of a family emergency, but I am very focused and very excited for today's webinar that is happening with lovely, lovely participants from all over the world. So just a brief agenda. We're going to have introductions just to remind people again of what the Gender Community of Practice is. Following that, we're going to have icebreakers, where we're just going to have people really feel comfortable in this space. Following that, we're going to have the panel discussion from our 3 speakers. And then after that, we will have questions, answers, and discussions. I will make a note again that you're more than welcome to share your experiences in chat at any time. You don't have to necessarily wait for the Q&A session. All right. So to remind everyone, the Gender COP is here to promote dialogue that is inclusive, relevant, and localized. The whole point of the Gender COP is to really re-energize and refresh people's mindsets of gender, especially during COVID, and to remind them, what is really important to learn from the COVID-19, but also to share and interact and engage. What's important about the Gender COP is that we really drive, lessons and opportunities for people to engage, have interactive and insightful discussions on our platform. And we also provide practical strategies. And all of these things are shared on this platform called youthpower.org. Now, if you aren't part of the platform, I do highly recommend that you register. So you just go on this website, www.youthpower.org. You're more than welcome to just click register at the top right-hand side, and then just make sure that you connect and join any specific section. But obviously, because you're part of the gender section, be more than welcome to join the gender section as well. What happens in this gender community platform is that we do share resources, whether it be job opportunities, scholarships. We also do have discussions. So we have 2 days, specifically Mindful Mondays and Wishful Wednesdays, where we will engage in the community. And we really, really implore everyone to just engage, even if you can comment, even if you find something that's really interesting, it would be really great for you to just comment down below. So it really encourage you to join this platform. All right, now we move on to the fun part, which is icebreakers. So if you do have access to your computer, please could you join on this website called slido.com. So all you have to do is put in a link, www.slido.com, and then all you have to then do afterwards is put a code, this code here in the bar that you'll see when you join the homepage. Once you have joined, there's going to be a question that pops up either on your phone or with whichever device you've logged into. And please just tell us where you're from. We'd love to know where you're from. So just tell us from which country you're from. So we've got Nigeria, we've got Philippines, USA, we've got United States, we've got Mexico, we've got South Africa. We have 37 participants, so I would really like to see 37 responses here. Seems like a lot of people are joining in from the Philippines. A lot of people are also joining from the United States of America. We do have 18 responses, and I know we have 37 participants in chat. Just to remind you that you can join on your phone or your laptop. Just type in www.slido.com, put the code on the left-hand side here, and then just put in your response as to where you're from. We'd love to know where you're joining in from. Okay, we have 22 participants saying that they are from the Philippines, America, Mexico, South Africa, Liberia, and Nigeria. I'm not entirely sure if the other part, I see one participant typing as well. Let's see where you are joining from. Okay, we have another one. I think that was South Africa that moved. Philippines. All right. I hope everyone is able to join the platform. If you would like to, you're more than welcome to also tell us via Zoom chat where you're from. I see Nardia says that she is from Ghana. Lovely to have you here on this webinar, Nardia. We also have more participants typing in. I'm going to move on to the next slide just in terms of time so we can start with our panel discussion. Martha just says she's from New York City. That's amazing. All right, thank you, Martha, for joining. Okay. So we're going to get into the panel discussion, and I'm really excited for this conversation because I think what is important for us to realize is that although COVID-19 has had a major impact on the way we view social interactions, it also has had a major impact in the spaces we work in. And I'm really, really excited to have 3 speakers who are joining us to speak on the issues specifically in their country and how it's impacted sexual reproductive health and gender-based violence. So we have, sorry, I just want to make sure I've got the names correctly. So we have Aika. She's the Youth Advocacy Manager from Roots of Health from Philippines. We have Liesel Lifshitz, who's the Executive Director from Mujeres Aliadas. And both Aika and Liesel are part of the Women Strong International Network. And then we have Pina Korisang, who is the CEO of the Soul City Institute in South Africa. So we're going to start off with asking specific questions to the specific speakers. And I'm going to now hand it over to Pina. And Pina, I would like to ask you the following question. What measures has Soul City had to take since the advent of COVID-19? And how have you innovated to ensure critical issues of gender-based violence remain on the agenda in a world where we live today? So Pina, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Candice, and greetings to everyone joining today. You know, one of the things that we noted about COVID-19 is how it impacted on the health, on the mental health, you know, on the economics, and even on the family structure. And as Soul City Institute, an intersectional feminist organization, our concern is young women and girls, the safety of young women and girls, and ensuring that they live in a world that is supporting and that is enabling of their development so that they can reach their full potential. So because we run young women's clubs and we work in communities that are hard to reach, we had to look at the ways where we can reach young women even during the hard lockdowns without disrupting the information and the knowledge sharing that we were doing with them. So one of the ways we innovated was, you know, to partner with communities, with churches, buildings, church buildings, and other available spaces for us to continue spreading the message for young people. You know, you would see on the picture that is projected there that there's a wall where young people themselves went and wrote messages, you know, about how to prevent, where to get information, and how to access services even during hard lockdowns. So innovation was important because in a country where, you know, inequality is a problem, you don't want to leave out any young person. And the inequalities, you know, were clearly, sorry, at the time of COVID, we could see the inequalities in our country because those who had continued to get services from private clinics, from private doctors, but those who rely on public services could not access the services. So there was a service disruption. And because of that, we found that young people were not able to even communicate the fact that they were being abused in their homes. You know, so the other innovation was the different apps that we used, and Hello Rainbow being one of them. So in answering your question, Candice, I think, you continue to provide a needed service, but you find ways of reaching the young people in a way that speaks also to them. So you want the messages that they see, to be youthful, to be lively, so that the wall will catch their attention and they will stop and read what is written on this wall and engage with the information that is there. And there's a telephone number that is also given there. BY's website is also given there. So they were able to access the information, and as they were listening to the radio slots in their communities, they were able to ask questions, so that there's no vacuum in terms of them seeing the message, but not having anyone to respond to the questions that they were asking.
Thank you so much, Pina, for that. The kickoff to really placing how COVID-19 had an impact, in particular for youth accessing services. I can imagine how difficult it is as a young person now remaining indoors and not knowing how they can either call or know which clinic to go to. So Soul City Institute making those services accessible for young people is very, very critical work. And we applaud you for the work that you continue to do, including now. I now move on to Aika. And Aika is going to speak on briefly about COVID-19 in the context of Philippines. And Aika, could you talk a little bit about the impact COVID-19 had and what youth can do as the world is starting to emerge from this pandemic, as we're starting to now live and embrace this new normal, and how young people in particular can respond to the issues regarding sexual reproductive health and gender-based violence?
Thank you so much, Candice. So hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Aika, the Youth Advocacy Manager of Roots of Health. And actually, as one of the grant partners and learning lab members of Women Strong, Roots of Health is able to share actually our learning and our successes of our clinical and community program during the height of the pandemic through our learning product toolkit, which will be, I guess, will be shared by Chesina in the chat box. But yes, to answer your question, Candice, actually, the pandemic has exacerbated the barriers and issues that the youth experience related to sexual and reproductive health, particularly on the access to quality information and the SRH services. Also, due to COVID restrictions, of course, as what Fina said, it disrupted the mobility. Thus, it also disrupted the SRH programs and the services. And as well as, of course, in our country, the government-led recalibration of health providers focused from SRH to COVID prevention and treatment. So those were the things that, that really affected the programming when it comes to SRH and the services. And also, of course, the pandemic has able to put young people at risk of sexual violence within their homes, or they were forced to stay at home with their abusers. Also, the pandemic has affected the mental health of some young people due to social isolation, anxiety, and depression. And of course, according to the World Health Organization, COVID-19 pandemic triggered a 25% prevalence of anxiety and depression worldwide. So as an organization, we've identified the several gaps and issues as we've been within and emerging from the pandemic. And we are pleased actually to share that the young people we work with have been an integral part of identifying the challenges and coming up with the solutions to help solve them. And some of these include teaching in a community setting. So during the lockdown, we knew that we could not reach youth in person. So we have to pivot most of our programming online. And of course, we have utilized the social media platforms and social media apps to do this. However, of course, we've been pleased to be able to reach the young people over the internet. So it enabled us to reach 3,000, almost 3,600 young people in the year 2021. But of course, we also know that there are, of course, many young people whom we cannot reach online. And to solve this issue, we have worked with the youth council leaders in community settings to teach groups of young people in their communities in person. And as you can see in the photo, this is an example of what we do in a community setting. And of course, these youth council leaders, we have trained them when it comes to SRH advocacy, and they've been very integral when it comes to providing teaching in the communities. And also, we partner with the communities as well to, of course, make a access to contraception, especially condoms. So young people, of course, know the importance of having a safe and non-judgmental space for you to access the services. And of course, the COVID-19 restriction have affected this, and our youth advocates actually work with us to set up condom dispensers in their communities. So these condom dispensers are places where young people gather and hang out. And actually, in one of the communities here in the city, our youth advocates shared that in a certain barangay or community, during the first few days of setting up the condom dispenser, and it ran out of condoms just a few weeks after. So you can really see the demand when it comes to the services such as condoms. And of course, we have amplified or augmented most of our community work, especially on the community-based clinics. And we have also increased our community-based HIV screening. So our youth volunteers who have increased the amount of the community-based HIV screening that we carry out in order to reach more vulnerable young people at the risk of HIV. So actually in 2020 to 2022, so this is the year of the heightened year of the pandemic. So our youth advocates have screened almost 550 individuals for HIV screening. And of course, what can the youth do? So as our communities are now starting to emerge from the pandemic, we believe it is crucial to go back and work within the communities. Through youth partnerships, of course, and involvement, we can navigate and, of course, work through the emerging gaps of the sexual and reproductive health that affect young people in their own communities. So also, young people must be at the center of implementing and initiating these programs and activities in their own communities. And of course, they must be the drivers and partners of change. May sound cliche, but yes, they should be at the center. And I think I'll just say, I quote that our youth advocate said. She said that be informed and be involved. And a lot of people talk about this stuff, but don't really do anything or just go with the flow because it is the most popular opinion. Rather than just echoing what is being said by a large crowd, the youth must, of course, be part of the change. And of course, words mean nothing if there's no action. So yeah, I think overall, of course, the youth must be the initiators and drivers of change in their own communities.
You bring such an important point, Aika, in saying that young people are the change makers in the communities, but young people also need the access to resources to unlock their own potential. And so the work that you're doing as an organization is really critical because sexual and reproductive health is an inevitable part of human life. And so if young people don't have access to the information or access to the services, it really can put them feeling isolated and feeling embarrassed. And this is so critical to unlock their potential so that they are able to be change makers in their communities. So thank you for that introduction to the work that you do. And thank you for just briefly mentioning how important young people are in just changing the world for the better. We now move on to Liesl. And we want Liesl to just introduce herself and explain the organization that she is involved in, but most importantly to discuss again the impact that COVID-19 has had, but in particular what COVID-19 has done in changing norms. I think often what we've realized is that beyond us just having to do social distancing and adapt to new social life behaviors, it's also created new norms. And what have these norms created in sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence? So Liesl, please could you just introduce yourself, your organization, and just speak about the new norms that have been created during this pandemic.
Hi, yes, thank you everyone for the invitation and for having us here. I'm Lisel from Mexico. I'm the executive director of the nonprofit called Mujeres Aliadas. We are in central Mexico, and we work with sexual and reproductive rights, health and rights with women, teens, and children with the model of midwifery, where the attention is centered in the women we served. So I've been involved in women's rights for the last 18 years. I guess it all started when I became a mother and started thinking about body processes that we women face throughout our life. And for the last 2 years, Mujeres Aliadas has been involved in the learning lab with Women Strong, sharing experiences with other partners from the health lab. So this has been a great experience so far. So talking a bit about the case in Mexico, of course, as you all know, and as you all have experienced, COVID has been a huge disruptor in our way of life. We for maybe almost 2 years, we wouldn't be able to go out to schools and to communities to give our workshops, what we usually did. Fortunately, for the last months, we've gone back to communities and schools, and this has been great. You are seeing now a picture of a workshop with teens, with 6th graders. It's a workshop about menstrual pads, menstrual cloth pads, reusable, that you can do yourself and wash yourself, because we've seen for the last years that menstruation is a very good entry point for talking about sexual and reproductive rights, because it's the opportunity to start talking about body processes. So this has been a learning we've had for the last years, and I guess it's been working really good. So we've also seen other things that have come out with COVID. We've seen increased domestic violence within households. And you know, before COVID, we used to address obstetric violence because we work with midwives and midwifery. But now, during this pandemic, we have been forced to talk more about other types of violences as well. And I say violences in plural because we have many kinds of violence, right? So we have started to talk about this, to design some strategies of attention, and we also understand our limitations. So we are starting to build a network with women from communities to teach on identifying violence, about domestic violence, economic violence, institutional violence, sexual and obstetric violence, and to find together ways of attention. So we don't have like all the answers, we have more questions than answers, as you may all understand. I guess in your countries it might be the same. But we've also seen increased rates of teen pregnancies, increased rates of school dropout, and along with more girls working in the fields in agriculture. And we see lack of safe spaces to talk about what we're feeling, about our body processes. And we see that the pandemic has made people less tolerant, and forced to stay at home has made a whole new dynamic within the household. So we want to question the social mandates that have been more evident to us for the last years. We have seen that many of the teens that get to our clinic for consultation, they want to get pregnant. So this has been kind of challenging for us, because in the communities we work with, teens are supposed to get married at very young ages and to have children at very young ages. And it's just the way it is. It's not very much questioned. So we're starting to question that, because in our clinic we have like the commitment to serve people in a nice and good way. but still, when we have teens coming here, but we also want to prevent teen pregnancies. So what do you do when you have teens wanting and asking to get pregnant? They want fertility consultations with our midwives, and we're like, oh, what are we going to do with this if we want to prevent pregnancies, but they want to get pregnant? We used to think that all teen pregnancies were unplanned and unwanted, and this is not being the case here. So this is a hard question that maybe we could all think together on how to address, because it's not there's not an easy answer to that. So please, let's continue talking about this and how on how to communicate that there is more in life and in your life plan as a teenager, besides being married and besides being a mother. So this is like a starting point for us to discuss. There's a lot to talk about this.
It's so interesting that, you know, something where before COVID, we were having conversations about preventing teenage pregnancy, and then being forced into lockdown. This new norm in Mexico has come out of where young girls are wanting to get pregnant, and it's very interesting to understand what factors are driving that. You know, is it the role of social media? Is it the role of, you know, just how tough the economy is right now, globally, locally? It's really interesting to see those factors and how that has created a social shift. I'd really like to implore or encourage the chat, you know, please feel free to share any interesting insights that you might have as well. If there's something that you have also seen that has changed because of COVID-19, and in particular sexual and reproductive health or gender-based violence, please feel free to share that in chat. The space is more than yours than it is ours, and we just want to be able to learn from each other. So now I'm going to go into specific questions to specific specific panelists. And I'm going to go to Liesel now, where I want to ask you the question, how do you think other partners can look for these changing norms? How do they track and document these changing norms, especially with geography and culture playing into this? So how would you advise other organizations to trace these changing norms in this new normal?
Well, as Aika said, we need to make young people, teens, part of the change, part of the action. We need to ask them what they think. So interaction is crucial. So whatever means of interaction we can find like in-person workshops, lectures, activities. This year we're having back our summer program with teens, which will be great because it's an opportunity to get together in a like in a longer space of time, maybe a week. So we need to talk to them and to find creative ways of addressing potent messages to them. I think we need short but strong messages directed to teen audiences. And I guess we've been all thinking about this lately, about how to go online in the internet with messages that will get their attention, right? So I think we should question these social mandates that are there just because. We need to think about arts, about other ways of doing things in life. Maybe if you get involved in music or in painting or in writing, you have an alternative or a different option, right? So we've been trying here we have a new YouTube channel with a feminist girl character called Purpurina, which Chisina already added in the chat box, so you can see it. It's in Spanish. Hopefully we can have some translations soon. So we've been doing some radio messages in the communities. We've been doing the YouTube production, which it has been fun and it has been challenging as well. We're on social media. We're trying to get on TikTok. So I mean, it's a combination of in-person activities in school and very, very, very important. I think we need to get the whole community involved. I mean, if we work with teens and we've got very empowered teens that then go to their teachers or to their parents with all these new ideas, and they find themselves not being listened or heard. We need to make a more comprehensive community work at all levels. So we need to work with teachers, with parents, with the community as a whole, so that all these new things we're trying to get done with teens don't get stuck when they reach adults, right? So these are some ideas I can think of.
Thank you so much. And I think you did answer Hannah's question where she asked what has been the most efficient way in reaching the youth. So you've mentioned the YouTube videos, you mentioned radio, and I think that is a very interactive and engaging way. You know, it's a new normal of just pushing access and education in a very creative way. Tina, I'd also like to ask you the question, what are new norms that have been created in South Africa, especially regarding sexual reproductive health and gender-based violence, and how do you see these new norms playing out currently?
Yeah, I think, you know, we are seeing more and more women reporting their violation. I think before it used to be something that people could not report, fear of stigma, you know, the inefficiencies of the system in dealing with, you know, laying of charges. But we have seen, you know, a spike in the numbers of gender-based violence that are being reported, especially in these 2 years of COVID. And we know it's because of the activism that has gone into creating awareness and, you know, just encouraging women to come out and report, and also educating women about their rights. As Soul City, the work that we do is centered around the rights of women. We educate them in terms of, you know, how to go and access services, what to do if the service that you want is not being offered, and also if you don't, you know, get the service in a friendly manner, what is it that you can do? And we've seen that that activism has actually translated, because the young women that are in our clubs have gone and educated others. And that has been, I think, in the communities where we work, something that we appreciate in terms of how, from targeting an individual young woman, the message has also gotten to the community. And we've seen how communities are slowly rallying, you know, together to make sure that they report. The environment is created of reporting, which is important when we deal with gender-based violence. But we still struggle with, you know, the norms, as Liesl was speaking about the different norms. We still struggle with patriarchal norms around gender. You know, we still find that young women are problematized in our country. When rape has happened, we don't, you know, we don't ask why the perpetrator raped. We ask young women, what were you wearing? And we want that shift to happen. And we give young women information, empowerment to say it will never be your fault. Each time you are violated, it can never be what you were wearing that made you get raped, you know, because rape is wrong. It doesn't matter what you were doing, what you were wearing, where you were, you know. And so we've done a lot of advocacy work with young women. Even the booklet that that was shared, the toolkit that was shared on this platform, is around just educating young women on what consent is. You know, one of the things that we found interesting as we were doing our awareness campaigns was that there was a culture of stealthing that no one was attending to. You know, stealthing is the act of removing rape during the act, removing condom during the act, you know, and we were pushing as an organization to say this should be seen as rape, because if I gave consent to a protected sex and in the middle of the act you remove it, you are violating me. You should ask for new permission, you know, so to say, for us to be able to continue. So awareness creation is what we are doing, but we are also saying in the same breath, we want to move away from awareness creation to accountability. And the accountability is where we now bring everyone on board, including government. And that's where we do, you know, through other partnerships, where we actually go and call ministers out for their lack of participation or their non-responsiveness or the bills that are not yielding the result we want. So as an organization, we center the work we do on individual young women, but we understand an ecological model where this young woman cannot be isolated. She comes from a family. That family exists in a society, in a community, and therefore the responsibility we have is to educate at each layer so that the information is the same, but the understanding is the same, and therefore we can then have a call to action with everyone to say, if this is wrong, how do we as a community take action to protect the young women of our communities? So we are moving slowly away from awareness creation. We balance it with holding people accountable. So while we give information, education, each time somebody has failed, we are there to say, this is your responsibility. Take charge and ensure that you respond effectively. And we have seen, good successes. We have seen in some areas arrests being made because of the activism of young women. So we train them to be activists. We want them to be able to take charge, as Aika was saying. We want them to lead, the change. We don't want them to stay on the sideways and say, let the adults take care of things. They have the voice. We are not giving them a voice. We are just elevating and amplifying the voice that young women have by creating platforms where we can take them with us and say, here they are to speak for themselves, because it should never be anything that is done about young people without young people.
That is so powerful. And I think, the power of social media in creating, accountability and calling out and actually pointing some form of, accountability to individuals or organizations that are continuing these acts of injustice is so powerful. And I think which is really key is that often a lot of us were on social media. I think even during the time of lockdown, WhatsApp groups were created as a way to share information, as a way for people to be alerted about what's going on in their community. So social media is so key in that. And I think that having that necessary shift from going from awareness, because I think everyone is aware of the plight of gender-based violence, but now we need to actually put the work on the ground in saying we need to hold perpetrators accountable. We need to call on for more education so that there's an end to this injustice is so key. And I really would like for Aika to just speak on her experiences of the new norms that they have learned, in particular, how you see young people addressing this. So what are some things that you have learned from your work in sexual reproductive health and gender-based violence, during the pandemic that you want to continue, Aika, and what are things that you think will need to change that will impact the youth? So if you could just answer that, and then I'll ask the same question to Liesl and then Pina afterwards. So Aika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Candice. Actually, we've learned a lot during the pandemic. And there are some things, of course, that we would like to continue in the new normal setting. So for example, during the start of the pandemic, I've mentioned that we have pivoted most of our programming online. So we would like, of course, to continue our online webinars and trainings, because it has enabled us to reach beyond borders. So before we just used to teach here in Palawan, but through online webinars and trainings, we have, of course, trained teachers from, for example, from the different island or from the different region. So that has been very helpful in terms of advocating our cause, and also putting more adolescent sexual reproductive health contents online. So of course, we'll continue creating these contents for use online, especially on apps that are, of course, popular with the young people, like what Liesl said, like TikTok. So we have our different platforms or social media apps we've penetrated during the pandemic, and we would like to continue that. And of course, we would also we recently actually launched a Tagalog website. So it is a local dialect or language here in Philippines. So because we have seen that there is I think, a lack of web contents that are, of course, in a local language. So, of course, this website would cater the needs of our stakeholders when it comes to the materials and resources in ASRH, or adolescent sexual and reproductive health. And of course, we also have a Tagalog website, again, that is malayaako.ph. This is funded actually by USAID in partnership with the Research Triangle Institute and the Department of Health, so it's a government, and the Population Commission. So this website is made with and for young people to obtain, of course, credible and comprehensive, non-judgmental information on reproductive health, relationships, mental health, and physical development, of course, in a language that they can understand and, of course, they can relate to. And also, this website also features dedicated section or articles about LGBTQIA+ issues that are really seldom talked about in our context or in our culture, because Philippines is known to be conservative in terms of the talks or topics about LGBTQIA+, and I guess more all over sexuality too. And of course, we've proven that establishing partnerships and networks have been very, integral in terms of going back to the community. So of course, we will continue and strengthen the partnerships that we've made in the communities. We will continue partnering with the youth councils to reach young people in their own communities. And of course, it's a very, in a community setting, young people are more relaxed and, they feel more at ease voicing their questions compared to in a school setting. So that's what we have observed, and we will surely continue that. And of course, we will also continue training young people to become youth advocates or youth volunteers, because they are more, of course, confident in disseminating the SRH information to their peers and to their friends. And actually, we are happy, of course, to continue those programming, but there are also things or programs that we have identified that really need to change. So these include the mental health support for youth. So we have done a research about in the pandemic, during the pandemic, I guess it's in the year of 2020 or 2021, during the pandemic, on teen pregnancy. And it showed us that young people need to have access to mental health resources and support. And they need this even more now. Of course, as we have seen, right, there's a spike of anxiety and depression among youth. And of course, they are struggling with depression and anxiety brought about by the pandemic. And although as an organization, we have not focused on mental health before, but we see now that we must, of course, include this in our approach to comprehensive sexual health programming. And actually, we are on the pilot stage of our programming as for our mental health program. And also, I think I'd like to also re-echo as what Fina said earlier about, engaging men also in terms of the program. So we've also learned from that research that most of the girls, their male partners are often their biggest barrier to using contraception. So now that restrictions are easing, we are about to pilot test a programming for young couples, wherein we will provide participants with the tips and training on how to improve communication skills that is, of course, focused on consent. So, and how to have a healthier relationship. So, whether or not they are ready, of course, to have sex or, try contraception, it is still important, of course, to talk and emphasize consent in a relationship. So that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Aida. That's such an important point that you bring in emphasizing the need to educate men as well, right? We need to prioritize that need as well, because we are working in spaces that are very women and girls centric, but at the end of the day, we need to also remove the stigma that exists within male communities as well. Liesl, I ask you the same question. What are some things that you've learned about your work in sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence during the pandemic that you want to continue in the new normal, and practices that you think will need to change in particular that are impacting the youth? Liesl, feel free to answer.
Thank you. First, I'd like to answer Hannah's questions in the chat. She asks, what has worked best for communicating with teens? And I would say the combination of media is that has worked best for us. It's not only one single thing. If you have one workshop and then you see that message reinforced in some kind of social media and maybe in a wall painted in your community and in a radio message, I think that's more comprehensive. So the answer is the combination of different strategies. And answering to Susan's questions, yes, we do work with both teachers and parents in a way of forming formers. You know, we need more help to send this message around, because we are a small organization. We cannot solve the whole problematic that is so large, right? All the problems that patriarchy brings to society. So we kind of seek for help, and Women Strong has been of great help, and the sharing with other partners, with other experiences. This has been really nurturous for us, and also having communication between our programs. We have our clinic, we have our midwifery school, we have our teen program, and our women's program. So this is when we find out that we were having teens in consultation for fertility, for getting pregnant. And that's why we say, oh, okay, what can we do in our team program to help our clinic? So communication is very important. And sometimes when you are involved in the day-to-day activity, sometimes we forget this. So Women Strong has been on top of this, on having us reflect on what we do, having conversations on what we do day to day. So communication within our organization to learn what we are doing is crucial, and we need to be reminded of that on a day-to-day basis. So we have to understand our limitations. As I told you, we cannot solve it all. But we've been trying to do some network with the government, with some international agencies that have looked for us, as UNICEF and UNFPA. So I know we can give some of our ideas of what we see to larger audiences, and to discuss in a larger level what we can do for our youth, right? So I think this has been working well too. We recently had a meeting with UNICEF here in our organization, which is great. And people from several parts of the country came here. So it was a really good experience, sharing what we all do and discussing what we're doing with mental health. As Aika says, yes, we do have really higher rates of depression and anxiety. We even see them at home with their own teens. I have one of my daughters facing that, and it's been hard, right, to deal with that. So we need to continue our efforts to form networks, larger networks of committed women and teens that want to send the message around and help other people, even if we are not trained for everything, for every single thing, right? So we don't have psychologists here in our organization, but we might ask for help elsewhere when we find the need, right? And we try to build networks with other people that are trained in the things we are not. So, and again, talking about the life plan, I guess, is crucial.
Thank you so much, Liesl, for that important response. Yeah, the work that we're all doing is crucial. We are changing lives, we are changing communities for the better. And yet we need the resources to do that, to enable us to continue and to grow. And it's really great that you are providing those necessary challenges as a way for you to also perhaps allow for other participants to resonate and also to reflect on their own challenges as well. And perhaps collaboration is key in this space. You might have a psychologist who would probably be willing to offer virtual sessions to members of your club. If there is a psychologist, please direct yourself to Liesel. But I think collaboration is such a great tool, especially during COVID-19, because I think from my point of view, I learned that it was so great connecting online virtually to other communities around the world. And we all are doing amazing work in addressing the same issue. Hina, I would like to ask you the same question. So what are some things that have been learned about your work in sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence that you want to continue in the new normal? Whether it be TikTok, I know you love social media, Hina, whether it be Instagram, whether it be, you know, the distribution of education through radio, and what are things that need to change during this new normal?
So it's important that we also acknowledge that while we have moved to using technology and it's convenient and has made our lives easy, you know, during COVID-19 or during hard lockdowns, we've left out some young women or some young people who don't have access. And for me, advocating for universal access is important. You know, in South Africa, data, as depending what you call it, is still very expensive. You know, so you have a lot of young people who don't have access to internet. They don't have the resources. So while we have moved and we have normalized meeting virtually, doing our work virtually, there's a lot of young people that we are leaving out. And so we need to also remind ourselves as we do the work that we can't leave anyone behind. It's important that we always go back, you know, to doing face-to-face. And now that things are easing up, going back to doing face-to-face, reconnecting with the young people, and again, re-emphasizing their value and their importance, because, you know, some young people, they've lost so much in this, with this pandemic. We have a new wave of OVC, you know, often and vulnerable children, in a country where 60% of homes are still run by single parents. So you have, you know, confounded to that issue, the issue of now child-headed households coming up. And while we want to support them, we know we can't do everything. So the things that we do well is to take the issues and raise them in the right platforms. You know, make as much noise as we can to the relevant people and follow up to see that the necessary changes are happening. And that's what we've learned about the work that we do, that we do such an important role of facilitating, you know, and advocating, you know, for those who can't speak for themselves. And therefore we can't lose that role that we play in making sure that issues come to the fore and they are attended to, and we hold people accountable. The other thing that we've learned about the work that we do is that, you know, so one thing that I didn't mention is that even in the first lockdown, we ran a show on TV, the first of its kind, a talk show called It's a Feminist Thing, because we wanted to challenge, you know, the norms that exist in society, where we've normalized rape, where we've normalized abuse of women, where we've normalized patriarchy, and we are not challenging it. So It's a Feminist Thing was on SABC, SABC2, which is a government channel, you know, and we were speaking real issues, calling issues out. And it was interesting what we saw when we did the evaluation, that society is still held back on oppressing women. You know, the comments that were coming is that we are creating problems, we are changing God's order of things, you know, and for us, it means we must continue pushing, because we cannot continue living in a world that oppresses women. 50% of the population cannot live in oppression while the other 50 is, living their lives the way they want at the expense of women. We've also learned that women, are the face of poverty, and I mean women in all their categories, right? They are, and all their vulnerabilities. They are the face of poverty, the face of rape, the face of inequality, unemployment, all the ills. If you want to see even HIV, it carries a woman's face. And so for us, the importance of making sure women are aware of how to prevent, not only prevent, but when you are already, a victim or a survivor, how you continue and reclaim your life and reclaim the power that was taken from you by this violation. So those important lessons that we've learned, we want to continue doing that important work, but we want to do it with an understanding that we can't leave anyone behind. And so we're still trying to navigate, a space where we don't have internet access. What are the strategies we can use, such as local radio, local print, face-to-face meetings, and how do we then bridge the gap between those who have access and those who don't have? And that is why in the clubs, we bring young women from these two worlds together, sort of for an exchange, and also to just be a support system for one another, to build social cohesion, because it's important also in this period to remind people of humanity, just being human beings who appreciate, support, and love one another, because we can lose that. And sometimes I think when we don't remind each other of the importance of Ubuntu, we run the risk of people just not caring and being desensitized to issues that are faced by others. So those important lessons, Candice, for us as an organization, is what our next strategy is about. It's about taking the lessons we learned in how we can be more inclusive and making sure that in the next phase, we bring disability on the table, we bring LGBTIQ issues on the table, we challenge the status quo, we make sure that people who sit in positions of power sit uncomfortably in those positions.
That's really important. We need to shake tables for those people who are allowing for injustices to occur, and you are doing phenomenal work in that. So we are moving to the Q&A session, and we do have a very interesting question from Hannah, who asks, how does your staff and organization manage burnout and self-care, especially because we are dealing with such intensive topics, being sexual reproductive health, gender-based violence? How do we handle ensuring that we don't burn out, and how do you incorporate that into your organization? Aika, I'll start with you, then we'll move on to Liesl, and then Pina, you can ask the question. Aika?
Thank you so much, Candice. Well, actually, I'm really fortunate to be part of Roots of Health, because Roots of Health as an organization has a culture, of course, that allows you to, of course, practice self-care, and of course, aside from the breaks that they allow you for the vacation leaves, of course, as an organization, we also have a referral system when it comes to, for example, if you think that you want to talk to a psychologist, or you need a psychotherapy or something like that. So our human resource management is actually very supportive in our mental health and well-being in terms of that. So yeah, and aside from that, of course, working with very supportive colleagues is also a big help. And I think as a community of development workers, you also have to support each other. That's a really I guess during the pandemic, that was the thing that kept us sane, I guess. So something like that. So being able to talk to your peers or colleagues about these problems, and no judgment at all, I guess that's a very important aspect in terms of the burnout, or self-care and whatnot. So those things.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely very interesting ways of ensuring burnout doesn't occur. Liesl, how does your organization, yourself as an activist, to ensure that burnout doesn't occur? How do you take care of yourself, especially in dealing with such heavy issues?
Well, in Mujeres Aliadas, we've been doing a 1-year-long self-care workshop with a psychologist that has been helping out with dealing with personal stuff, right? So we've been talking about our lives, and we've been talking about what has brought us to work in this field. And what we all have in common, all the women we work for Mujeres Aliadas, is that we've experienced some kind of violence, of gender violence, right? So we have this in common that we understand for all of us. And so we always remind ourselves that we have personal lives, that it's not about work, that each one is dealing at different stages of life. Some of us have children, some of us have partners, some of us are married, some not. So we take in account all this diversity of lifestyles, of life situations, of preferences, and we tend to talk about this, to be very respectful of of vacation periods. When someone has to take vacation, they must, and it's okay. And it's okay if you have to take care of some personal things, even if it's your health, your children, your whatever, right? So that's how we've dealt with it, and I guess it's going okay. We have one of our partners in surgery this week for breast cancer, so we are all supportive of that, of her work, and of doing her activities while she's not here. So we always remember we are a team of people that we are integral beings, right? We're not only here for work. We're here to live our lives and to continuously share this message of what we need to do, what we want our lives to be.
Thank you so much for that response, Liesl. And Pina, how do you, as the CEO of Soul City Institute, ensure that your employees, your team, your facilitators on the ground are taking care of themselves and also ensuring that burnout does not occur? Especially from an individual perspective, I can imagine running an organization is very difficult. Please, can you share?
For me, fortunately, I have a very supportive family, a supportive partner, but also I know how to take things easy. I don't overstretch myself. So I have boundaries. There are certain things that I just will not do, just, so that I take care of myself. But as an organization, we made it a principle that during the 2 years of lockdown, we held group sessions with a psychologist, and also individuals would go for sessions if they needed. But with group, we were still trying to build the culture of team, because while we were working from home, it was important that we still establish team, and we did also fun things, which was great, because whenever we were allowed, when the lockdowns were eased, we would go for team building exercises. I remember we went and played golf, as a team, and people won awards. So it was a way of motivating people, but also trying to keep things light and fun. And so we have calendar events in the organization that we celebrate. Mother's Day, we buy women gifts. Youth Day, we buy youth in the organization gifts. Father's Day, we do fun things, and we try to really make the culture and the environment very accommodative of everyone. And it's beautiful to receive a gift, a box of chocolate with a message from your CEO congratulating you for the hard work you do, or a group lunch where the CEO just says, today don't bring lunch boxes, all of us, let's meet in the cafeteria and let's just have, breaking bread together. So those are the kind of things that we've been doing. And the other thing that we did and we continue to do now is that we allowed people to continue working from home, even after, lockdown. In South Africa, we say we no longer have lockdown, but we are still on lockdown. We are on level 1. And we give people 3 days to work from home. They only come to the office Tuesdays and Fridays so that they can, continue supporting their families and their children in the home with homework and whatever. And with petrol prices having gone up, I think they really appreciate, not driving Monday to Friday to go to the office. So that's some of the things that we are doing just to make it easy for people.
Yeah, I can definitely understand just how important it was to connect virtually, because being at home during the lockdown meant that we still needed to do the work. But in order for us to connect and ensure that the team culture was there, I'm sure there were a lot of Zoom meetings that were being held. I'm sure there were a lot of icebreakers and games that you're doing online. But thankfully, we have moved to level 1. So meeting in person is possible. We do have another question here where the question asks, what are the strategies that each and every one of you as an organization use to bridge the gap to ensure that everyone has access to the information that the organization that you work at is creating or producing? I know we briefly mentioned radio, we mentioned pamphlets, we even mentioned TikTok, but what one form of, could you just speak to exactly what strategies you're using to ensure that there's consistency throughout being digital medium platforms or face-to-face? Aika, I'll start with you.
I think when it comes to being consistent also with the messaging, whether what kind of platform you're using, whether it may be a online or any social media apps or in person. However, of course, based on our experience also, and of course me as a facilitator, it is really, very different if you do it, of course, in person. There's really a magic when there's an interaction in person. However, of course, you have to adapt with the new setting, the new normal setting. So actually, we've been doing hybrids setups or sessions with our facilitations, and doing things asynchronous and synchronously. So those were the things that really kind of we are working right now, and somehow it's been effective when it comes to giving the message, or relaying or conveying the message or the lessons and the learnings that we want to, of course, the participants or the youth or whoever it is that we are having a conversation to, as the key takeaways when they leave the sessions or the workshop or something like that. But yeah, I guess whatever platform you use, you need to be consistent with what would be the key takeaways or the messages that your audience would want, for you to leave with them.
Liesl, would you like to, thank you so much, Aika, for that response. Liesl, would you like to talk about how you provide access to those who don't have access to digital medium platforms, how you provide the content or the awareness through different platforms?
Yes, as I said, we use a combination of strategies. So we finally got back to schools, as in the picture I showed at the beginning. So we are doing our workshops in elementary schools and junior high schools, and we take our work out to the communities. Our clinic, we take clinical days of practice out there, so that women can get the attention from us. And we are doing painting these walls with some messages after a workshop when we work with women. So we are maintaining all the social media strategies and the online stuff, but at the same time, we are doing all these in-person activities. So all of our activities are back to in-person, and we use like the the internet to reinforce these contents and to have more visibility for other places, right? But we have our menstrual workshops, our Know Your Body workshops, the sexual and reproductive rights, Know Your Rights. And this summer we'll have some itinerant activities in several towns around with different themes, including LGBT plus recognition, and talking about all these things, talking about abortion. That's well, legislation hasn't helped here in our state, but in other states it has happened. So we continue in person and at the same time reinforce with online materials.
Thank you so much, Liesl. Really appreciate the response. Pina, could you just answer how you provide access to people who don't have access? And then after your response, could you just provide a quick wrap up of final remarks? And after you're done, Pina, we'll move back to Liesl and then Aika. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing that clinics, remain inaccessible in terms not only of distance, but the unfriendliness of the services in the clinics, we work with the Department of Health to capacitate nurses in, developing what we call youth-friendly or youth zones where youth-friendly services are offered. So young people are able to access the clinics. We've also put what we call social mobilizers, young people, peers in those clinics to be the support and to do peer education with the young people. So we are seeing young people accessing clinics more now that we have that structure in place. But we also take services out of clinics because we want to normalize for young people to access service anywhere. So we do a lot of community-based events where we bring partners with mobile services to those events. And that's where we see a lot of testing that we do, it's a pity I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I know that we've done in excess of like 5,000 in one event testings, for young people, because you bring young people out of a setup that is stigmatized and you bring the services to them in the comfort of their community, but also where they are having fun and doing other activities and other events. And that's the kind of culture we want to create, where we, if I don't have a better word, but where we decolonize healthcare. It can't just be offered in a facility, especially things like contraceptives, condoms, and health education. Any space could be a space where we do these things, and we are doing that a lot in the communities that we work in.
Thank you so much. Decolonize healthcare. If Pina was president, that would be her motto. We love to see it. Thank you so much. Liesl, could you provide?
You had asked me, sorry, Candice, you had asked me to report.
Yeah.
So let me just do a quick. I believe in young people so much as I'm no longer considered young based on my age in South Africa, but I'm a mother to a 25-year-old and a 15-year-old. And for me, their development is important. And when I see, the systemic failures of our country in how it's not meeting the needs of young people, it makes me wake up every morning to say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to join the movement of young people to call for change. And that's all that I'm asking all of us to do. Let us be, the safety net that holds these young people, hold their hand over the baton, but make sure that we don't just let them run on their own. Let's be their backup, run with them up to the finish line, because they need to get to a point where things have changed. It can't be that in my generation, we were struggling with certain things and their generation is also struggling. There must be something that gives. And I think jointly, we can actually break that. And we must just dismantle patriarchy if we want to win.
Exactly, the patriarchy down with the patriarchy down. Thank you so much, Pina, for your response. Liesl, I move to you. Please, can you just give us a quick summary of all the remarks you made? And then Aika, I'll move on to you. Thank you so much again for your lovely sentiments and your participation. I think I've learned so much, and I hope the participants as well have learned. Please continue to comment and chat of any interesting things that are resonating with you to our participants. Liesl, final remarks.
Thank you. Yeah, I would say, as Pina just said, I love that. Let's have fun in the process. Let's not get so serious about this. Let's enjoy as sex life should be. It should be enjoyable. We should embrace pleasure, not talk about all these morality, sins, things around sex, right? And let's also separate sexual from reproductive, right? Because we've seen that youth nowadays, many of them don't want to have kids. They don't want to get pregnant. They don't want to reproduce, right? So sexual rights are one thing and reproductive rights are another. They are not always together. So we can say sexual rights and in some cases reproductive rights, right? So just leave that for further reflection, and just remind as final remarks that we should think in communities as a whole, not only separating groups. And that's it. And let's talk more about this and keep learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Liesl. Aika, your final remarks. Down with the patriarchy, dismantle the patriarchy, do not decolonize healthcare. What would you say would be your slogan and your final remarks, please?
I am for dismantling the patriarchy, actually. I have a bag that, well, actually it's a censored, it's the patriarchy. But yeah, that's the same thing. But yeah, I guess with all the talks or the discussion that we have, it all boils down to, I guess, the saying, or I guess the phrase that it takes a village to raise a child. So I guess it is of course important to engage the youth. However, as what Lisel and Fina said, that of course it's not enough to of course engage the youth, and we also have to of course engage other, especially the systematic and the systems that are in place that makes our of course the sexual health and the reproductive health services still at subpar for women and youth. So I guess there's still a lot of work to be done, but yes, let's have fun in the process while destroying the patriarchy.
I 100% agree. Dismantle the patriarchy, decolonize healthcare, and let's have fun whilst we are doing life-changing work. I'd just like to thank the panelists for this conversation, this very necessary conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your own experiences as part of your organization. And thank you to everyone who have been sharing their questions as well and participating in chat. I'm going to hand over to Shisna, who's going to wrap up the webinar. Shisna, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for this engaging conversation. Thank you to the panelists. This was the first meeting for the Gender Community of Practice, and we plan to have future meetings that are really tailored to the topic areas of interest of the COP members. So we wanted to find out from you all for future webinars, what topic areas are you interested in discussing? If you could please place any ideas of future conversations that you want within this COP in the chat, that would be great. When you think about your work, what are some issues that come up that you would like to have more discussion on? And I can give you some examples. It could be youth-friendly SRH services. It could be child marriage. We could have conversations about things that haven't worked and how we've shifted our programming. How do we integrate maternal, child, and health into HIV programming? Addressing gender norms. What are some issue areas that you all would want to discuss for future webinars? Please put it in their chat. Okay, we have child marriage and early unions. Thank you, LaSalle. We also talked a lot about the use of digital technology and social media for health messaging. So we can have conversations about the different types of ways we use technology to access, to ensure health dissemination. FGMC is other areas. Feel free to put in the chat any ideas that you have. Okay, child marriage and family planning. Yes, family planning, high impact practices are other topic areas that we can discuss. Engaging men and boys. FGMC. So we plan to have another meeting for the gender community of practice next month. And it's going to be a networking event so that we can all meet each other, talk about our work, and talk about ways that we want to collaborate, especially on how we can collaborate on different products together. I see we're all, okay, so child marriage and then anxiety and depression, mental health. Some upcoming events that we're going to be having is this networking event in July, and then other upcoming Youth Power Learning events will be June 28th. We'll be having something on building sustainable youth networks. June 30th, engaging youth in higher education for climate change. If you have any questions about this webinar or any questions for the panelists, please email us at info@youthpower.org to ask any questions. And we welcome you to join the Gender COP discussion group at the link provided. Mindful Mondays, we provide resources to jobs, opportunities, events. Wishful Wednesdays, we ask thought-provoking questions that are happening in our communities. So please join the Gender COP discussion group. And if you want to continue to check out future events at www.youthpower.org. We want to thank Lacelle, Aika, and Bina for an engaging discussion. We really appreciate the time and attention to this area and doing such innovative work. And please check out their learning products, which we sent you in the links. And we will send the recording and materials to those who registered. So thank you everyone for participating, and we hope to see you again next month.